What is up, my friend?
Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you, as always. It's more important to see you than it is to hear you. Although for the listeners, they just get to hear us. And
we
not see
almost
us.
did this one by remote. Would have been the first one in a long time, huh?
Yeah, it kind of takes the juju away from it. So I think it's more important to be a little late, but to have it in person so we can keep the flow going.
Yeah, our apologies, but like we keep saying, life keeps getting in the way of our hobby.
Yeah,
so.
life happens. But let's see if I can make you angry.
Okay,
because you
won't take much.
You were saying you were already pissed off. You've been pissed off since a couple of days, and now the saga continues. So.
Yeah. Well, that's all personal stuff. So. Let's see what's going on in the world. Well, I did have a doctor experience. I had to go up to the 6th floor of a doctor's building, and then I didn't have my vaccination card. So they sent me back. So it was a half an hour for me to go from the doctor's office back to my vehicle, go through all the elevators. You know, you get in these medical buildings. And with the COVID thing, you're only supposed to have 4 people. Like it matters.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Though? Why do you not have a picture of your vaccination card on your phone?
I do now.
And you were going to do a stress test, so why not? I mean, why not just take the stairs?
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're going to possibly fail the test or die, don't you want to know before you actually start the test? It's like a chance to have like a.
You don't fail a stress test.
You don't.
Well, we'll see. I don't think you fail. I mean, it kind of is what it is.
But there's a fail to start, right? Didn't you tell me before, like if you have a heart rate that's above a certain level, they won't do it because what? It's unsafe?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, if you walk in there and your heart rate is 165.
They won't do it.
Yeah, well, you're probably on death's door.
But let's say you take the stairs instead of the elevator, and your heart rate, like let's say you don't make it to the top of the stairs. That would be a bad day to do the stress test.
You know, even when I go for a walk and I walk uphill and I completely run out of breath and I have to stop, my heart rate's only like 130. It's not 165. You know, so
when you were doing your walks, were you doing any hills?
Yeah. Especially after we got going for a while, and had a little more. What's the word? Stamina. You know? There was at the end of it, there was like 3 inclines in that walk that we did every time, and so every one of those I can walk on level ground pretty good. But on an incline, it really starts to take my breath, away. So I would get up to the top of the incline, and then I'd have to stop for a minute.
Are you not building up any endurance by doing it more frequently or increasing the climb?
Well, I haven't since we got back last March from Hawaii. I haven't gone on a walk.
What about? Do you ever use walking sticks?
No,
that'd be kind of cool. I mean like an actual walking stick, not like the hurricane that old people use. You've seen those? You know what the hurricane is?
We bought one for Debbie's mom.
Yeah, does she use it?
Well, she has like 6 canes now.
It looks cool in the commercial because it can stand up by itself. Yeah. Does it actually do that?
They all do that.
They do?
Well, yeah. I mean, all the modern canes have 4 suction cup bottom on them or whatever.
Well, how does it work on carpet?
It works. You just use it like they all kind of stand up. I mean, it's a pretty old fashioned cane if it won't stand up on its own.
But like old fashioned canes would just look like a candy cane. It has a little hook and doesn't stand up, and it's wood, and it's.
I have one of those from one of my previous leg injuries back in the day. I still have it. I kept it from the workers' comp situation.
Did you have to go through a cane fitting?
No, not on a wooden cane. They only come in sort of like one size. That's the cool thing. Why are we talking about orthopedic devices?
It's good. I think it's good, for people to kind of understand. Well, number one, they care about you, and I care about you. We want to know how you're doing, make sure that you're safe and you're healthy and you're doing well. But also, it's a good kind of forecast into the future. What those of us who maybe are not at your age have to look forward to.
Absolutely, this is the future, folks. So get ready for it. All in all, it's great. I am achieving a different kind of peace of mind from when I started. So just real brief, I'm going to go back to the February before the pandemic, or the January before the pandemic hit. I hadn't been to a doctor or a dentist in a couple of years, and the excuses don't really matter. I just wasn't doing it. So I started by going in to see the dentist, and then I ended up having oral surgery, and we've all heard that. That's the saga of the wooden teeth.
Yep. Well documented.
Yeah, and so that started it. Then things kind of, doctor visits and things kind of got slowed down when COVID hit. I had just gone to the doctor. I was supposed to go get some other, things done, and that just didn't happen because of the pandemic. Once we got past the hard part on that, I started going, back to the doctor, and then, started this. I'm going to think here. I guess I went in August back to the doctor for a follow-up, and there we decided to run some other, go see a cardiologist, schedule some other, internist kind of things. And just to get ahead of things, see what was going on, and had a little bit of a blip on my blood labs where my PSAs were a little high. So for men, that's always like a sign where maybe you're having a prostate problem. And so went and got all that checked out. So that was a little stressful. It's like, what's the result going to be? Because they were it was high. It really kind of was. But it wasn't cancer, so that's good. So now I'm at the point where, and I had a stress test, a stress echo test yesterday, and I haven't had an emergency phone call yet from my doctor. So feeling pretty good about that.
Is any of the maintenance, if you will, that you've been doing in the last couple of years, is there a correlation at all to that and the amount of time that you weren't getting regular checkups, those years that you hadn't gone? Or, in other words, if you had gone, would there be things that they could have done or would have done?
I would have done all these things maybe just a little sooner. The only one that was, I haven't had a heart attack or anything like that, so I haven't had any heart issues.
You never have, right?
Well, 16 years ago, I had something called pericarditis, and that was a bacterial infection in my heart sac. That did land me in the hospital for a while, and that was a cardiological problem.
But is it technically a heart attack?
No, not a heart attack. I had I got an infection in a bacterial infection in my heart sac as a result of something else, and that caused my heart to beat real rapidly, and then that caused my heart to go into atrial fibrillation, which you probably heard about, irregular heartbeat, and so I got treated for that and cured it. It went back in the rhythm, and the bacterial heart infection, pericarditis, endocarditis. There's the one that kids sometimes get after the vaccine. Typically that's antibiotics, right? And injectable antibiotics. So that went away pretty fast, and then that left the irregular heartbeat, and we got that fixed. So then I've been, the last 15 years really had no heart problems. So I monitor my heart rate pretty regular to make sure it's pretty regularly to make sure my heart is not isn't in atrial fibrillation, because that's AFib. Medical terms are getting difficult. Anyway,
people have probably heard that term on the commercials, right?
Yeah,
the long movie commercials where people are selling drugs.
Yep.
Well, what's the drug they recommend for that?
Oh, God, I don't even remember the name of it, because it's a heart regulator, right? Atrial fibrillation. It just means that your heart's out of rhythm. It's irregular heartbeat. It makes you feel like crap. It makes you feel lightheaded, like you're running a fever, but you're not. And that lightheaded feeling. And it's a little hard to diagnose, right? And I was a little bit younger when that happened, so 15, 16 years ago, so that wasn't the first thing that popped to to the top of my doctor's mind. But he eventually heard a bit of a murmur, and that was because of the bacterial infection was getting pretty bad in the heart sac. And he finally heard it with stethoscopes, and that was just a regular doctor. They're not super expert at listening to your heart.
This is like your primary doctor?
Yeah, this is my primary doctor.
So they just Google it and put on the show, put the stethoscope on you, listen, look at their watch, make a couple notes.
It's so funny. I have fired more than one doctor, right? Because I just don't like I just don't like their attitude, right? So,
well, you almost fired the person at the door yesterday, you were telling me.
Well, here's the thing. The nurse?
Yeah.
Don't fight with the nurse. Just go.
Isn't that kind of analogous to arguing with the waiter at the restaurant or the chef?
It is a little. I mean, it is. She caught me early and goes, she pissed me off by telling me I had to have my Vax card. And I really they had not said anything about that, but I should have brought it with me. I thought about it, but once I got in, it was running a little late. Once I got parked and everything, I just forgot to grab it. So, hey, I need your thing. That got me irritated right off the bat. So,
but will you use tech for that? Isn't there some vaccine app or something? Or the state of California
you
now.
Take a picture of it.
Well, you can, of course, but isn't there something? I was reading also about some states. I think California is one where you can legally store your driver's license in one of these apps and use that to show. Valid proof of ID, like if you get pulled over or something. Your insurance card has been that way for a while, but I think your ID is that way, and maybe the vaccine card.
I would think so. I've never used any of that. I have when I took what I thought was a step up. I don't print boarding passes anymore, so I store them in my phone one way or the other. If you have an Apple phone, you can just instantly transfer. You can get your boarding pass online, and then you can just instantly store it in the Apple Wallet.
Yeah.
It'll just be right there. Or you can take a picture of it, save it to your pictures or whatever. It'll scan no matter what. It's just another QR code. That's what it is. So, yeah, I'll use it. That'll be fine. Hey, trust me, I'm never going to the doctor again without a picture of that fax card in my fucking wallet. So, yeah, so, I caught myself, though.
Is that the first place you've been to where they required you to show it?
The first place I've been to where somebody asked for it and I didn't have it. Yeah, I can't remember. I've only had to show it a couple of times since I got it, and I just haven't done that much stuff, right? Most people just take your word for it. Are you vaccinated? Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising, really. I mean, we've talked a lot about.
I guess here I'm going to segue. This is how it works on the Couch Journal show. What about the quarterback? I don't know his name.
Aaron Rodgers.
That we all took his word for it, but he's a fucking liar.
Yeah, that's a good story. I don't know all the details, but
here, let me clear him up for you. He's a fucking liar.
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, so what you're referring to is essentially he got COVID, or he tested, right? Yeah. I'm teeing it up here for the listeners who maybe don't know. And the question is, did he imply that he was vaccinated, which I think he did, and then, it also calls into question the NFL, protocol and requirements for players and
they took his word for it. That's what brought that to mind.
So what did he say? That he actually was vaccinated? Because I read something that he's saying that he was.
He said he was immunized.
Right. So was he taking the Texas? What are the sites? The pop-up sites we always talk about. The pop-up sites. The not the ivermectin thing, but the other. Where they go and they do the antibody thing.
Oh, monoclonal antibodies?
Monoclonal antibodies. Yeah. He did something.
Okay.
He didn't not do anything. He did something, but he basically misled people to suggest he actually had one of the 3 legitimate vaccines.
Well,
correct?
First off, he called Joe Rogan and got advice. So there's his first mistake, right? You don't call.
I think he called him after the story broke, though. Hey, I'm in hot water. What do I do? I don't think he called him beforehand.
I don't know. I think I don't know. You know what? The more I hear about Joe Rogan, the less I like about it. So, anyway, so this guy, it was just a bunch of bullshit, right? I mean, just turns out to be another rich, spoiled, professional athlete that thinks his shit don't stink. And while everybody else around him on his, we don't have to include society at large. Let's just talk about everybody else in his sports organization has to follow the rules. For some reason he thinks, and I assume because he's the quarterback or some other bullshit, that he was better than that, and everybody else could do everything and follow the rules, and he didn't have to.
But sort of, because this is where the story kind of gets confusing for me, because I don't know all the details. I don't know that they had a requirement that you had to get vaccinated. I thought it was a little bit like, hey, we want you to get vaccinated, and we're asking you to, but if you don't, you're required to do, what is it, weekly tests, daily tests? I'm not sure.
Well, I think so, but he didn't do that either.
Are you sure? I thought he was getting the tests, and they had all been negative until it was positive, and that's how it found out he was positive and that he wasn't vaccinated.
I don't know. I don't know about that part of it. here's what the base of the story is without that complication. He was asked if he was vaccinated, and his answer was, "Oh yeah, I've been immunized." So that's a straight up lie.
Yeah, that stands on its own,
right?
Of course.
So, and then when the truth came out, then hit some nonsense about, well, I took ivermectin monoclonal antibody treatment with zinc. Well, none of that prevents getting COVID.
Nothing prevents getting
monoclonal
COVID.
Antibodies is a treatment if you've contracted COVID that you might give you benefit after you've already contracted it. It has nothing to do with prevention. Ivermectin is just a stupid fantasy, a foolish fantasy for a feeble mind. That's nothing to do. And then you know what the drug was back during the good old Trump days, that at the beginning of the pandemic?
Regeneron?
Well, Regeneron is a company, I think, right, that makes something. But it was chloroquine.
Yeah, that sounds
quinine.
Or it's
a malaria treatment.
Yeah, isn't it longer than that? Something?
Well,
I know what you're talking about.
I think chloroquine will do it as far as identifying. We talked about it in an episode before. Couldn't remember the name. Gets confusing. Monoclonal antibody treatment is about a $5,000 treatment that does evidently benefit you. If you've contracted COVID, it has no prophylactic. It's nothing about that can stop you from getting it. It doesn't provide any kind of immunization, asshole, Aaron Rodgers. That's not what that is. And so that's a legitimate treatment. Ivermectin is not legitimate, and chloroquine is not legitimate. Those are just
legitimate as far as
they don't have anything to do with COVID, either of them.
Well, when you say they're not legitimate as far as I think I know what you're saying as far as being considered a vaccine or qualifying you as being immunized, but they have been used as far as treatment of positive cases of COVID.
Ivermectin and chloroquine are not effective treatments for COVID. Neither one of them show any benefits for treatment of COVID.
Is that right?
Yeah, ivermectin is mostly a animal treatment, and again, it's not for COVID, right?
But it has been prescribed for people with COVID.
I do not know about that. I'm not going to go to the mat arguing that, but I do not believe that it is any kind of accepted treatment for COVID-19. It has some legitimate treatments, but it's not COVID-19. And chloroquine is just bullshit. That's just that's a anti-malarial treatment that has no benefit for COVID whatsoever. In fact, it has substantial possible side effects for your heart, and so probably it's more dangerous to take it than to not take it. So some things don't do any good, some things don't do any good and can do harm, and you get no benefit, right? You might trade off the possibility for some kind of rare heart reaction or something to chloroquine if it actually provided you some substantial benefit against COVID-19. But it doesn't. So all it has is this possible side effect. You're getting no benefit, So that's the dangerous thing about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not willing to die on this hill, but I've read both, right? That everything that you just said, I've also read stories that all those things can work, and I don't know what to believe.
Please.
But what I think go back to this story, because I think there's relevance here. Yeah, but there's relevance here into kind of what's going on in the bigger world with COVID mandates or vaccine mandates and employer mandates and all that. I do believe that he tried to mislead the organization in his choice of words to suggest that he had the vaccine, quote unquote, the jab. Right?
Jab, yeah.
Because that's your freedom card in this day and age. That's the reality. He probably deliberately, I don't know the guy, but he probably deliberately misled the organization. However, if I'm understanding,
I'm amazed that at this stage of the game with this story that you could use words like probably. Look, the guy just straight up lied about it.
Yeah, but we also listen.
He didn't have to do what everybody else was required.
Well,
to
hang
do.
on, I'm going to get there. But we also don't know. I mean, he's a jock, right? We don't know their level of intelligence. I'm just throwing that out there.
I don't like professional athletes.
But here's the thing. If I'm understanding it correctly, which this ties into the broader, what is it? Is it Department of Labor requirement of the employer mandate for companies with over 100 employees? Mm-hmm. If they gave him a choice, he still shouldn't have answered the way that he did because that was misleading or a flat out lie. But if they gave him the choice should remain that, okay, if I don't get vaccinated, I can test. Because to my knowledge, that is still in the Department of Labor requirement for businesses that...
What's the team?
He's of the Packers, Green Bay Packers. But I think this is an NFL policy.
My understanding is NFL or Green Bay Packer policy was to get vaccinated or at least not lie about it, right?
Yeah, not lying about it. But, I mean it's professional sports. So.
Maybe no pass for that.
Right? Professional sports, there's lies and everything.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Well... Yeah, okay.
But let's go back here, though. So if the choice is given, say, to employees who work for companies with over 100 employees to get the vaccine or test, what is it, weekly? I forget what the...
I think it is.
It's weekly,
something
right?
Something like that, yeah.
If you give somebody a choice, that still doesn't solve anything because you're going to have a number of those people who decide, well, okay, you're giving me an out here. I'll just get the test instead. So, I is that really going to solve anything? Especially as we.
Yeah, well, I'm not in favor of
it. And who pays for this test?
If it was up to me, Travis, so I'm not here to support that kind of mandate one way or the other. I just think everybody should get vaccinated, and that's the fucking end.
Well, we agree on that, and the choice word there is should.
Yeah,
but they shouldn't be required to.
I think that it's weak. I just think it's weak and chicken shit on everybody's part to go about the vaccine requirement in this manner, right? There should be no option not to take it. It's just it's a vaccination.
The other part is
yeah.
Well, we started this by saying I think it was you said something about the honor system. And of course, I am in no way at all in favor of more government intervention and intrusion, more than we already have. But isn't it kind of surprising when we talk about all the things we do on this podcast about what the government, how involved they want to be in our lives, including some of the recent stuff about IRS spending and looking into people's bank accounts and tracking transactions and taxes and all that stuff. Isn't it kind of surprising that they're willing to go there, but they're not willing to say, show me proof of your vaccination status to do XYZ? Like, that seems to me like the first thing that they would want to do.
They're chicken shit.
Why?
Because this vaccine, that's all pretty interesting stuff right there, right? But I'm frustrated, and you might hear it in my voice about this because, as a people, citizens of the United States, whatever, it's just idiotic that we're even talking about this. Rather you are required to get a vaccine to participate in society or not should not be a political thing. It has never been. Here's the problem. Here's the downside from all this horse shit about vaccinations. It is going to result in people not wanting to have children vaccinated for the things like polio and measles and things that we have virtually eradicated. And that alone is a big enough reason to just make them mandates and just learn to live with it.
But think about that, which I've cited a million times already, that places like public schools, you are required to get vaccines and you are required to show proof of vaccination for, I don't know if it's polio. I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a DTaP and there's a bunch of shit, right, that you got to get in the early years of your life. You have to show proof of that to enter public school. So that's an example of an organization that validates it.
But this stupid discussion that we're having on a national basis is, that has been this discussion about vaccinations that we're having currently could easily result in vaccination resistance for those very same required vaccinations.
I could see that, yeah.
Right?
And that logically makes sense.
That is going to be a problem. It doesn't take much for those diseases to spring back up in a non-vaccinated population.
So what's the solution? I mean,
make people get the fucking vaccinations. Make them get vaccinated for COVID and continue to make them get vaccinated for all these other childhood diseases and things that we've
But they're
stomped
not
out.
they're already not required to get those vaccines. They're just required to get them to participate at certain levels of society. You are like you're
Fuck
vaccinated
all
for
that.
but you're vaccinated
just
for
require
COVID.
everybody to get vaccinated, period. Just fucking stop it. Just get vaccinated. It shouldn't be a choice.
So the truth is, this is
This
the
is
other
not a freedom issue. It's nonsense.
But here's the other layer is how do you track it? And that's what I thought was interesting about the Aaron Rodgers story is you use the word honor system. And that's how we base the whole California reopening and the removal of masks because it was the honor system. You have the honor system on, pro sports and everything else. You tried to get into the doctors yesterday on the honor system. Now you are vaccinated.
Right. Well, but I mean, and I was going to give her a hard time about it, the nurse, but I stopped short because of that very reason, because I'm like, okay, this is virtually the same thing, right? You're going to go into a small room with a couple of techs that are going to administer a stress echo test. You're going to be breathing hard like a motherfucker, right? And, you're going to take your mask off because
because you need to
they're not going to make you wear it on the treadmill and stuff, and you're in this really confined space, and they don't want to do it if you're not vaccinated. And I don't blame them. And
see, I always pictured them like in a booth or something.
In a booth,
yeah. Like in a special booth that if you fall and there's blood, they're not going to get it on them.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, they kept their masks on. The two people in the room.
But are they there to catch you in case you fall off?
Well, distinct possibility. The good thing about the treadmill, it's got a thing to hang on to, right? So,
and it has the ripcord in case you fall, it shuts off.
Here's how it shuts off. You tell them to stop. You go, listen. You go, hey, if you need us to stop, say stop, and we'll stop it immediately, right? So that's how it happened. Anyway, long story short, look, I don't want to get too far down the road on this. I'm just going to put it out there. Look, if you have decided that you don't want to get vaccinated for whatever reason, you're making a mistake. That's all I can tell you. I don't hate you for it. I don't love you for it. I don't.
But you
care.
secretly hate them for it.
Just don't inflict your non-vaccinated status on me, okay? And if you plan on getting continuous tests so that somehow you think you're going to keep track of it, just know that there's still a period of time, even doing that on a weekly basis, where you can contract it and spread it before you find out. So listen, everybody, just fucking stop it with the freedom of choice nonsense and all the rest of it. It's become a stupid political thing. It's tied to the whole MAGA bullshit. Let all that go. This is a health issue. Nothing more, nothing less. And everybody should be required, when vaccines are available for communicable diseases, and then everybody should be required to take them, period.
Here's where I thought you were going with this, because I agree with 99% of your comments there. But do you think there's an element of that some groups of people who are considered the elite and are totally behind COVID vaccines would be outed if there was a requirement to show proof? In other words, the people are there more Aaron Rodgers out there of people that have said, yeah, I'm vaccinated and are really not?
I don't know. I mean, you mean someone like the governor or something like that?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, are there hypocrites and liars? Yeah, there are.
Are people hiding behind the honor system?
Well, I mean, that's fine. It's maybe you should be required to carry your Vax card with you or some. I mean, it's so easy, right? I mean, that's another reason why I didn't get into an argument with this gal yesterday, because I could have just took a picture of it, put it on my phone, not been an idiot, right? So there's so many easy ways to comply with that so that everybody else can remain safe. I mean, come on, let's just.
I wonder. This is still it's a hot topic for everybody, and it's politicized for a variety of reasons. But in my opinion, one of the main reasons it continues to be politicized is because politicians continue to lead the conversation, which I think is a big problem.
Okay, so let's just go there, right? Ted Cruz and Big Bird.
What was this about? I mean,
the stupidest news stories, So Ted Cruz, who has zero relevancy to anybody anywhere,
But he doesn't, though, because you're about to tell me a story about Ted Cruz and Big Bird.
Well, he came out, he shit-talked Big Bird for promoting people to get vaccinated, Big Bird as what is that?
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street character has come out for 3 or 4 decades on a regular basis to promote public health subjects. And this isn't the first time. And
Sesame Street in general has been known for what do you want to call it? A show or it's an educational platform. They've always been on the progressive side in a good way of things that advance society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is no surprise to anybody who knows what Sesame Street is or what they stand for.
The surprise is that a politician who is supposedly a national figure has run for president of the United States and lost, by the way, is a current sitting
It doesn't mean
senator,
anything. They all lose. You have to lose at least once now before you can get elected.
Right,
look at Biden.
Right, exactly. That's not that disqualifier anymore. But I mean, so he thinks that's worth talking. It's just stupid.
But it made it to the point. It made it to your radar.
It did.
I mean, and why? Because he's a loudmouth and he says funny shit. I've told you this before. I've told you this on the podcast. Every time he tries to make a point about something he thinks makes him look good, people post shit, memes of him at the airport. I saw a Ted Cruz costume for Halloween.
Did you?
Somebody with a pillow in their polo shirt tucked in, walking around with a Texas mask on and a suitcase. It was hilarious.
That's funny.
It is funny.
But it wouldn't be hard to make a Ted Cruz mask. I mean, he has his face. He just looks like a rat. So.
He looks like the dude from Bewitched. Remember the old show Bewitched?
Yeah.
He had like that really kind of
Dick Sargent.
Is it Dick Sargent?
Well, there's two of them. There's the
two. Yeah, Dick Sargent and Dick
York.
That's
Dick
it. And he had like the really pointed nose and the sloped chin.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of that guy.
That's funny. He's such a rat-looking piece of shit. So COVID, man. I mean, we need a poll. Somehow we need some feedback. I mean, I'm starting to worry. We talk about this so much because obviously we're obsessed with it. But what about the listeners? Are they sick of it?
Yeah, they're sick of it. I know they're sick of it. But the thing is, it's not a standalone thing anymore. So here's what I was going to say.
It's so spread out. You're right.
Here's what I was going to say about it. I was talking to a psychologist recently, interesting conversation, and he said something to me.
This is your regular session?
My regular session. Yeah. After the couch funeral session, I do another couch session to keep my head right.
Sorry.
Which I'm a big
Cheap
proponent
shot.
of that, by the
Cheap
way.
shot. Yeah,
I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But this was a casual conversation, and I can't do it justice. But what he was basically saying is that the topic came up about the old way of life and what the current way of life is in the future, and the idea of going back to normal. And what he was saying is that our brains can basically only pause whatever thing we're trying to pause, whether you're an athlete and you're not playing, whether you're a comedian, you're not on stage, whether you're a musician, you're not playing, and your life has paused, whether you're in business and your business is disrupted. There's a finite period of time that our brains can pause that, and he was suggesting it was anywhere from like 9 to 14 months, where in your mind you can set that aside and say, this is temporary, I can adjust to whatever the situation I'm in. Let's say you find yourself in jail, and you're thinking, okay, I will get back to that way of life for this period of time. And then after, say, that 14-month mark, the brain can't process it anymore, and it struggles to figure out, am I ever going to have that life again, or is this new life something that is unknown to me, unfamiliar, uncomfortable? Is that what's in front of me, and what the fuck does that look like, and how do I navigate it? And I had never thought of that before, as far as our brain's inability to measure time and what that means to how we view our stage of life and where we are. So if you think about that in terms of COVID, I wonder if, because we're kind of right there, right? I mean, yes, we're 18 months plus into this whole COVID thing, but the first few months it was really lost in translation of all it was all new, and it was a global thing, and there was just so much data there. But say after 3 months, it was like, this isn't going away. So let's say you're going to start the clock then, and then look at, the anti-vaxxers, the MAGA people. Is it that? And I'm just trying to draw a parallel here. Is it that those people are trying to hold on to the old normal, go back to that normal? And is this their way of resisting the change that is before them that ain't going away?
I think that's very interesting. I am hearing, as I listen to, podcasts or, talking heads on radio or TV or whatever, we're starting to hear terms like endemic, right? So it's like, hey, there's a lot of this. We're gonna beat this thing. We're gonna beat it. You probably could hear Biden talking about it yesterday. I think he made some kind of speech or something. I think at some point you start to talk about, well, how, we've got to move on. So, I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be that comfortable with people back in my space one way or the other. I don't care. So I think on the one hand, my brain is at that point that you're describing that the psychologist talks about. At some point I'm like, okay, I don't want to wear a mask anymore. I don't want to do all this shit. I don't want to worry about it anymore. And then on the other hand, though, there are some things on my personal level, like I'm not going to be comfortable with. I'm not ever going to be comfortable again in a crowded elevator. It's just not going to happen. I don't like people standing right behind me in the bank line, but to some degree, I never did. Right? So I guess it's the only thing that's really bothering me right now is the continuous politicalization of the discussion, right? It just should be about what makes sense and how much of this is just consideration for other people and courtesy and things like that. And all of that stuff gets lost in the stupid political conversations. And then complete fucking idiots like Ted Cruz, try to grab attention by doing something stupid like shit talking big.
Well, that's exactly right. He's trying to get attention for anything that will get his name in the news, and he's not alone. There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
And it worked, because it got onto your radar. I don't know how. Like, is that a supplemental, like, 11th bullet point on the Democratic talking points? Like, hey, just so you know.
Big Bird?
Yeah, you gotta put in your money for the Big Bird Defense Fund today.
I mean, it was on every newscast. Shepard Smith talked about it. I mean, it was on every.
I didn't see it. My wife told me about it. I didn't see it in any of my feeds. The only thing I saw was an unrelated story, something about, and I don't even know who the guy is. Maybe he's in the House. He's a Republican, and he was somehow involved in is it a meme? Is it an animation of a death threat against AOC? Something like this?
Oh, no.
I don't know the guy's name, so maybe it's not worth talking about, but he was either involved in sharing it maybe, or he was involved in putting it together. We got to look it up, but that was the only other news story that caught my radar.
A death threat against AOC. I mean, and I can totally understand and accept and have no problem that you don't like her, right? You've expressed that on this on this podcast and in person, and that makes sense. She's pretty, 180 degrees away from your outlook politically. That's okay, but I don't get any of the violence and the stuff that I've seen exhibited toward her by the right, or I just don't. It's not necessary. It's not right. And if there's some political idiot on the right involved in some kind of meme or animation or something that talks about a death threat or something to her, that sounds criminal to me, and I think it should just be handled that way.
Do you think there should be a higher standard if that threat comes from an elected official, or just, what do you mean by somebody from the right? Like, could that involve news organizations or just elected people?
Yeah, I think a death threat, reporting it is different.
Yes.
Right. But propagating it or being involved in the commission of it, I mean, whether you're a politician or a newscaster or just Joe Blow, that's criminal. That there are laws against that, right? You can't. That's not.
Are there
allowed.
though?
Yeah.
But what happened when
you can't threaten to kill somebody? That's a criminal offense.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I mean, that happened quite a bit during the Trump years. I can't recall any elected officials who were making threats or memes or anything like that. There was plenty of mudslinging from the Hollywood left. Like, remember the one broad, the comedian who famously was canceled because she had a picture of her with Trump's cut off head. She has a bloody head. Yeah. And then he was bashed. I mean, there was several high profile celebrities calling for Trump's head.
That is not the same thing. And so you have to separate some of this from political satire too. I know exactly who you're talking to. Her name escapes me. Oh, what a surprise. But real D-list celebrity, whatever. Her life goes on. She never threatened to kill Trump. I know exactly what you're talking about. It wasn't a death threat. It's not like she called up Donald Trump on his phone and talked to his 10-year-old son and said, "Hey, we're coming to kill your father." That kind of shit is criminal. Okay, it doesn't matter who it comes from or who it's about. If somebody was to call Barron Trump and tell him that they were coming for him and his family, that's criminal, right? So, and if you take a picture of Barron Trump's head and put it on a spike, that's been bad taste, but it's not criminal. It's stupid, but it's not criminal. So there's differences.
I think Trump at the time tried to make the claim that it was a death threat.
Yeah, well, of course, whatever. I mean, personally, I don't give a shit what Trump says about anything. If he's saying it, it's a lie. So I've never heard a truthful thing come out of his fucking face ever. So
come on, you have.
I can't think of one. So maybe you could think of one.
When he said,
how about this one? Hey, maybe we could just hit the body with a really powerful light. Maybe like from the outside, something like that. How about that one? Do you remember that one?
Well, he said some truthful things, like when he was, saying that the vaccines were coming, and they were, and they did.
Oh, okay, well, my response to that is that even a broken clock is correct twice a day.
I know.
That's funny. So let's see. So there was Big Bird. So got that into the discussion. Stupid shit. And go ahead.
Well, I just, was thinking about. I just asked you if there should be some kind of a higher standard, right, for elected officials, things that they do and they say. And unrelated to COVID, maybe we could shift gears here for a second. But what I was thinking about is there's a lot of crypto stuff in the news. You and I were talking about crypto the other day.
Yeah,
investing in general.
Took a little slide over the week, over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. Everything's wild these days, and I don't know anything about it.
I don't see it up here on the.
It flashed a minute ago. I think mostly crypto's down, but there is talk. Usually, it's when wealthy elected officials on the right have investments, and then the critics on the left say things like, "Well, they shouldn't. Members of Congress shouldn't be allowed to hold stock, hold investments." What's your take on
that? Legislators, right? Should they be allowed to participate in the stock market or something? Is that what you're talking about?
More or less. I mean, obviously,
because they have inside knowledge on stuff. I think when they commit criminal insider trading, that they should be hunted down and prosecuted.
What would constitute criminal insider trading?
You're involved in legislation that's going to cause a given stock to go up or down one way or the other, and you know about it before everybody does, and you either buy that stock or sell that stock as a result of that ahead of public knowledge. That's insider trading. That's against the law.
That's against the law for everybody, though.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it should be.
You don't need another law for that. Do you need a harsher law for a politician? Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking, you're okay with those politicians owning the stock to begin with?
They can own it, but here's the problem. There's just an inherent problem with people that are going to be involved in creating legislation that will affect stocks participating in the stock market. I mean, let's be frank. Not everybody, and I'm not talking about mutual funds because that's so diversified that none of that applies to. None of what we're talking about here applies to that. So I'm not suggesting that
like your 401k
couldn't have a 401k.
Yeah.
But most people are not in the stock market. So the fact that most legislators are is just a result of the fact that they have insider knowledge and they frequently use it to their benefit.
Do you think it's that?
Unpunished for that?
Do you think that's the reason they're in the stock market, or it's because usually they're in the upper percentages of wealth? I mean, if you break down just from a numbers perspective, most of the people who participate in the stock market are of a certain income level.
I would be perfectly fine with banning members of Congress or the Senate from being actual participating.
That could get you kicked out of the Democratic Party, you know.
I don't know. I think that is. That is something that is discussed from time to time because there's an inherent problem with it, right? There's a conflict of interest that doesn't go away, and I think that would qualify as one of those things, Travis, that we've talked about or talk about from time to time that probably afflicts both sides of the aisle, right? I'm not trying to say that is only something. That's only something that Republicans would do. Only Republicans would be in the stock market and then use their vast amount of inside knowledge about what's going to affect the stock market from a political point of view to enrich themselves. They're not the only ones doing that. So, and I'm not saying that, neither are you. So I think, I think that's a problem. I mean, short of banning them from participating in the stock market, we should be vigilant and make sure that anytime they are caught breaking the laws that concern insider trading, they should be punished, and it should be maximum. And so, as far as a higher standard, I think that's a higher standard. I think when someone like that is caught breaking that kind of public trust, they need to be, prosecuted.
And it's an interesting philosophical question because on one hand, and look, for the record, I am not advocating anything be stripped from anybody. If anything, I want less government intervention. So I don't want to tell anybody what to do. I don't want to take away our elected officials' rights to participate in the stock market.
I wouldn't have thought that would be your position.
No, so. but it's interesting because on one hand, we should hold our elected officials to a higher standard, right? Because of all the responsibility.
Listen, we need to begin holding them to some kind of standard because, frankly, it has become it is at the point now with government officials that nobody is being held to any kind of standard, and
there's no standard to hold them to.
The problem,
what's the standard?
Well, the problem is that the idea of that. First off, there wasn't nearly as much need to worry about it prior to the Trump appearance in modern politics. Right? It's not just him, but he has certainly been the vanguard of this. So. You and I have had this discussion a bunch of times. In fact, over the Trump time that we've talked, the year that we did the podcast that Trump was still in office, I think we talked about a bunch of things that I would tell you, hey, that's illegal. You can't do that. You can't hold a political rally at the White House if you're the fucking president.
I still think that's dumb.
That's against the law.
I think, and I take your word for it, but that's a dumb law.
So, but here's the thing, right? We should be following those laws to the letter because they're there for a reason. Most of them come from a long time ago. That's why you're either not aware of it or you think it's dumb.
And or there really hasn't been an enactment of it, right? There's not a lot of precedent on some of these laws.
In the past, no president of the United States would violate the Hatch Act by holding a political function in the White House. Not because it was a violation of the Hatch Act, because it wasn't right. It's not right to do that. And it's morally not right. And there's the Hatch Act.
I just think it's dumb. If that's your house, you want to invite people over. Hey, it was during COVID. It was work from home. He couldn't leave.
It's not the president's house. Right?
He's the resident there for the time he's in office.
Yeah, so that's just a minor, easy example for me to come up with. There are lots of other things like that. So, I mean, Pompeo violated the Hatch Act about 20 or 30 times, and so by doing a variety of things, right, that no other Secretary of State would have ever thought of doing, not because it was illegal, but because it wasn't the right thing to do. So the Trump administration et al. Have blown up that idea a lot. And that doesn't mean that, I mean, we should think about this, right? Those are the kind of things that have been blown up over the last few years that are important to whether democracy continues, right? We've talked about this a lot. Forbearance and things like that, where you don't go to the, just because you legally can do something, you don't always go to the extreme of doing it. And the other side of that, hey, because something is illegal, but it isn't a death sentence for violating it, you don't say, well, that's not worth prosecuting, and then we trusted that government elected officials would never push these limits like this because it's bad for the country. But
we'll use the word trust.
This ilk, they don't give a shit what's good for the country. Nobody in the Trump administration, nobody on the MAGA side of things gives a shit about what's good for the country.
But let's say
There's a broad statement for you.
Yeah, so let's let that stand on its own, and let's just assume and push that aside for a second that that's true. It doesn't stop.
There's nobody here to argue.
But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there as far as that's not where it's going to end. If we just simply say, "Hey, this is," and you're not saying this, but the Trump organization, nobody cares what's good for the country. Moving forward, though, as society evolves past Trump and our country grows, and there's turnover in elected officials.
You hope.
Well, go back to this idea, though, of a higher standard of elected officials. And this is kind of what I was just thinking kind of out loud here. Mm-hmm. On one hand, we want our elected officials to be normal, regular people because, after all, government's not a thing. We are government, and we just send people. Government doesn't exist without us. It's not independent of its people, of course. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, we want the people to be as normal, if you will, and as representative of the population of which it represents. But on the other hand, you want it to be kind of this larger in life, smarter than the rest of us, so you can make the decisions that we're not capable of making, and you can act on behalf of the people and make good faith decisions about how to guide us into the future. It's called leadership.
I don't know, Mr. Jefferson. I'm not sure yet. Go ahead.
So, and again, I'm just bouncing this around.
Only white landowners should make decisions.
No, but the truth is, again, go back to the higher standard. Maybe I'm trying to tie this all the way back, again, a second or a third reference to the gatekeeping process. But can you have both? Let me frame it in this way, in this form of a question. Can you have both? Can you have normal, regular, representative people and also have people who are held to a higher standard and should be held to a higher standard and that are trusted and sent through the gatekeeping process that we can hold them accountable? Well,
I guess I would say yes to that proposition or supposition. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that statement. Is it happening? I mean, the gatekeeping thing that I brought up quite a while ago after I read a book, frankly, that used that term, and it was the first time I ever really thought about it. How did political figures get into the ring in the past? Right? It wasn't. I mean, it was pre-internet. It was pre-television. It was
pre-electricity.
Yeah, it was pre a lot of things.
It was a much smaller ring.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
And there was a way that people got into it, and there were groups, political parties were the gatekeepers of political nominees. Right. Nobody would get nominated for an office and be voted on by whatever made up the electorate at any given time. All the white landowners back in the beginning, all the white men a little later, all the white people a little later, then finally, the black people and everybody, who was in control of who got there. Right? Those were the political parties. And that wasn't widely talked about or even known. It just happened, and all of a sudden somebody would be the nominee for vice president or president or senator or mayor or governor. This all happened through the parties. That's why there are parties, right? And so then as information became more readily available, it became more well known. It's still not super well known, right? But I think as it's broken down quite a bit, because often when people found out about the deals made in the smoky back rooms or whatever of politics, they thought it was a bad thing because it seemed exclusive and didn't seem like, that it was made by a small group of people. And it was. Was it always perfect? It doesn't seem like it was, but was it horrible? Well, I don't know, because that process is broken down with the internet and television and a master manipulator of media, that is evil from the ground up, was able to get in and get himself elected president. So the gatekeeping process, for better or for worse, as we used to know it, broke down and it's gone.
I think one of the big elements of that process is you mentioned media. Go back a couple hundred years. What was the media? You sent a telegram and you'd find out 2 or 3 weeks later what the hell happened on the East Coast, and that was your news. And you fast forward all the way to the Trump campaign, which we've talked about, where he largely used and relied on Twitter. I think a big part of his success in that was that he went right to the people. He bypassed the gatekeeping process, as we've talked about, where he wasn't really part of the Republican Party, was willing to not go with them if they didn't endorse him.
Right.
And so, he just sidestepped the whole process to begin with.
And other people on the other side of the aisle will do the same, right? Pete Buttigieg. Not Pete Buttigieg. Who's the guy from Texas?
Abbott?
No.
Cruz?
No, not a Democrat. And he lost.
Oh, yes. He's working for Del Taco now.
Del Taco.
What is his?
He's got a funny nickname. Whatever. And even AOC, right? I mean, not really. I mean, she just kind of went to the people, through social media and different things. And
this goddamn social media.
Well,
to blame.
It is what it is, So,
yeah, how come they're all pissed off at Facebook and Twitter? That's what got them elected.
I don't know that they are. Yeah, so I mean, I love that whole examination of the gatekeeping process, but I do believe that it's gone. I don't think it really exists anymore. I'm not sure. I mean, there's still political parties and there's some form of it, but I'm not sure. It's not as. I mean, Trump broke through it. I mean, certainly he is not a product of the Republican political party backroom gatekeeping process that produced George Bush, or any of the Bushes, or the Bush that ran against Trump and lost. I mean, he came out of that process.
Right.
He was part of that party. So I think that's been blown up quite a bit.
Do we think it's dead forever? Much like music has changed forever because we have streaming.
Changing. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, is it dead forever? I mean, I think it's dead as far as being a backroom, smoke-filled backroom process, with a bunch of political strong men or something. I think that's probably changed.
I think we're going to know maybe our next president or the one after that. Our next president could very well be Harris, of course, if she inherits the job. But I think the next election, the next elected president is going to give us a huge insight into what the status of this process is. If it's gone forever, if it's changed, if it has a new form, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's really, we talked a little bit a couple of shows ago about being so narrow focused, right? I mean, for a while I was getting depressed because it's like, okay, everything that happens today, whether it's inflation or, bad press about the southern border or something like that. I'm talking for the Biden administration. Does every one of these things translate into some kind of disaster in the midterms? Well, here's a newsflash for everybody, okay? Midterms are always a disaster for the party that's in the White House. So that's very rare that it isn't. And I don't see a lot here that is telling me yet, although we got time, but I'm not seeing a lot in the news or in the way things are going that's telling me it's going to be any different. That the majorities in the House and the Senate are so slim, it almost seems inevitable that,
of course,
that they'll flip. So we'll see. That may not happen. I mean, there's plenty of time, much like the Democrats who can snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory at a moment's notice. So can the Republicans. So I mean, I think they're walking a very tenuous tightrope with their continued reliance on the Trump gang as the showrunner for their entire situation. I don't know. I think that's going to change. I mean, there are so many possibilities, not the least of which is Trump could just eat that final fatal Big Mac, and that's the end of that story at any moment. And much as you pointed out with Biden, I mean, these guys are in the danger zone.
They're on borrowed time,
health-wise, right?
As far as math is concerned.
Yeah. So, but I think more as likely, or maybe more likely, is that there's some kind of misstep, right? I mean, the Trump thing is a phenomenon. There's no doubt about it. I think. I mean, I'm not a fan. I guess we've established that.
You're not a fan of Trump?
Yeah.
No way.
I guess we've established that. But I don't think I think it would be foolish to short shift his ability to manipulate media. But I think because it's not a planned out kind of thing and a lot of shooting from the hip, there's potential there for a huge problem. So what would it take? Kevin McCarthy turns out to be a transvestite prostitute murderer. Who the hell knows? Things can happen, right? McConnell could kick the bucket.
How old is he?
He's old. I mean, he's not a young guy, right? The public could just get sick of him, right? I mean, he's out there and is what he is, and I'm sure there's a huge swath of what's left of the real Republican Party that thinks he's the man and the last standard bearer for the Republicans, and all the Trump people are just, they're just an aberration, of a temporary situation, and that sooner or later will come back. But anything could happen, right? He could.
But can you not see, because you've still yet to make any progress towards getting behind my idea of term limits and age limits. But can you
term limits and age limits?
But seriously, do you want 80, 85-year-old fuckers in Congress making decisions for us? I mean, it's one thing to question whether or not those ideas resonate with young people, which I've said before, I don't get the Bernie thing. I don't get why any young person, why that's their guy, he's their guy. But can you not see at all how at least kind of a forced turnover would bring fresh ideas in, or younger people, or open it up to more people? Maybe that is the catalyst to break down the gatekeeping process.
Listen, I think that for me, as far as any old Republicans,
this isn't ageism. I know you're sensitive to that.
Well, I plan on retaining a good sense of humor about that.
I hope
unlike some people we might know.
Just in general, retain your sense of humor.
Yeah. I think that I would let the electorate handle getting rid of when politicians are too old to do the job, and if people don't like that, well, then they can vote them out, and I think that's all it takes right there. So the age thing, I just don't think there's anywhere to go with that. Term limits is a completely different conversation that I'm going to be honest with you. I don't support it because I haven't really sussed it out. I mean, I haven't really given it deep thought. There's nothing on the surface of the idea that.
But I need to tell you two important things.
Okay, go ahead.
Number one, anything you say on this podcast, you reserve the right to change your opinion.
Well, of course.
And number two, anything you say on this podcast, I hate to burst your bubble, is not going to make it into law. So you take all the freedom you want, my friend.
Well, I'm not a.
and think aloud.
I think the worst idea ever would be that I would be some kind of lawmaker. That's a terrible idea. Or any kind of cop or enforcement person of any type. I think I'm not. I don't have.
You would be very lenient.
I don't know. I don't think. Well, I mean, that probably would be a problem, right? If I'd liked you, I wouldn't let you off.
But let's say you're the security guard who's got to monitor the pool and kick people out who are not leaving the pool when it needs to be cleaned.
I can't do that job because that would not be right.
Why not?
Because I wouldn't do that.
So you would be lenient.
It's a great concept. Yeah, I would be lenient. I mean, I would not be good at that because I wouldn't do that. Couldn't be a security guard because I wouldn't enforce any kind of regulations I didn't agree with. So,
are you saying that you would abide by the honor system?
I don't know about that, but I guess when I get pissed at people, that are doing jobs like the security guard or the guy that wanted me to get I really want to make sure that I don't get pissed at them, because they may not have the freedom to sit here and say, hey, I wouldn't do that if I was a security guard. Well, if you are a security guard, you have people depending on you and your income depends on it. You're going to do whatever the fuck they tell you to do. And that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't want to do that job. I wouldn't gravitate toward that kind of job, because I don't want to be subject to orders from people to do things I don't agree with, right? I mean, everybody is subject to that to some degree, but I mean, it's been a long time since I didn't feel like if somehow something was compelling me to do something I morally did not agree with, that I couldn't just say, no, fuck it, I'm not doing that. So I guess that for me, that comes down to like, what are the choices you make? If you if you choose to conduct your life in a manner that brings you to the apex of being a security guard, then you need to accept the consequences of your situation. I mean, they're your fault. It's nobody else is responsible for you being a security guard than you, right? So if that's what you are, then you have to decide you're either going to be something else or you're going to do what the security guard needs to do. And if you're the security guard at the Marriott in Hawaii, you're going to go tell people they got to get out of the pool for no reason. And that would not be something I could do.
Right, but you understand why they have to do it.
Well, I mean, they gave me that reason. It's my favorite. That's the policy, sir. So whether it's Marriott policy or Disney policy or whatever, so I immediately want to take some of my frustration and anger about that off on the person trying to enforce that, because my mind goes through this quick calculation. You're in this, the reason why you're here having to tell me this is because you're an idiot. And so I'm not giving you a break, so I'm going to get mad at you. Well, I want to try to back off that.
That would be good.
Some people are in situations where they have to do what they have to do.
And they're not the policy maker.
No. But I mean, if the policy is that, black people can't eat at the lunch counter,
which it was a policy at
right?
one time.
So then there's no level of excuse that gets somebody off for being the one that comes up to the black person sitting at the white lunch counter in Woolworths in 1930 and says, "Hey, you can't sit here."
Were there security guards at the Woolworths in the 30s? Not the store owner, but the guards not letting people in. I assume it was a thing, yeah?
I don't think so. I think, if you were a black person in Chicago in 1920 or something, and there was a lunch counter in the Woolworths that said whites only, I doubt seriously you
were going to try to go in.
Why would you? I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, if there was a thing that said no whites or blacks only at this lunch counter, I'm not going to go sit at that lunch counter. I mean, so for those people that, that were part of the civil rights movement way back when, that took on those challenges and things, that's a lot different than somebody just coming into a Woolworths in 1920 or something, and there is a color barrier there. To expect them to say, "Oh no, fuck that, I'm sitting here," that's not reasonable, right? And by the same token, if there's somebody there that really didn't think it was a problem but decided to enforce that rule, and that wouldn't be a security guard. I don't think it would probably be the guy behind the lunch counter, right? And then the way I've seen this depicted in movies, then he calls the racist sheriff, and they all the hicks come running.
Yeah, all the people who are supposed to be on the security side of things probably agree with the policy.
Oh, yeah, I mean, then you got a bunch of fat white guys in a pickup truck, in the back of a pickup truck, coming up Main Street to the diner to beat you to death with the sticks. They're the baseball bats and shit that they're bringing. So, we just all, I mean, at some stage, everybody's responsible for what they do, So I think it's a crazy topic. Not sure what it has to do with it, except we do hear and see a lot of people taking a lot of this kind of stuff into their own hands. And we've seen the we've seen the extreme so much in the last few years, right? There's a trial going on right now.
The Rittenhouse trial?
Now there's that fucking clown show, but more importantly, there's the Ahmaud Arbery.
Which one's this?
That's where the black jogger in the Georgia suburb was chased down by a couple of hicks in a car and shot to death because he was jogging.
I hate to even say it. There's so many of these stories. I don't even.
Yeah,
I'm not even familiar with this story.
These two guys were like supposedly they're like, well, we're neighborhood watch. And
similar to the one in Florida was.
I think it is Florida. It is Florida.
But that was the first
Ahmaud Arbery
high profile case where the guy was like a volunteer neighborhood watch guy and he shot the kid.
No. I mean, all right,
I'll let you say.
What a surprise! The two white guys doing this podcast don't really know what they're talking about on this issue. The guy's name, I'm pretty sure I got right, is Ahmaud Arbery.
Which one is he? The victim or
He's
the guy
the victim.
on trial?
He was the black jogger. He was just out for a jog in the neighborhood. I believe it was in Georgia. Shit, I could be wrong. It could be Florida. I'm not sure where the Rittenhouse thing, where the guy brings an
that was
AR-15
Wisconsin.
To was that
was
Wisconsin?
Kenosha. That was Kenosha.
Okay,
right?
So that's Wisconsin. So I believe Ahmaud Arbery is Florida.
Okay.
So again, what a surprise. Anyway, they saw him jogging. They decided to chase him down.
Was it night, I assume?
No, it was in the daytime. Broad daylight.
All right.
Broad daylight. And they decided to chase him down, and he ran, and they killed him. Right? I mean,
you say they, so there's a couple of guys?
Two guys. Yeah, father and son.
Okay.
Two guys, and they chased him down and killed him. And the excuse was that, well, there was some robbery or something. They evidently, maybe they monitored, the police van or something. There was something going on somewhere, and so they saw a black guy jogging.
They thought, that's him. He's fleeing the scene.
Yeah, it's just...
How'd they kill him?
I think they shot him.
So were they like actual security guards, or were they just lived in the neighborhood?
No, two fat white guys that live in the neighborhood and saw him, and they're self-proclaimed, neighborhood watch people, vigilantes.
Well, like I said,
they're going to trial.
Yeah, which is what you do.
They're likely
when
to get
there's a murder
off.
trial. Why?
Well, because the jury is from there.
Well, okay,
right?
so based on what you've told me, again, I hate to say it, I don't really even know this story. I assume it's a couple years old now if it's just now going to trial. It's kind of how these things work.
Probably at least a year.
Yeah, so you have two guys. Are they trying them separately or together?
I don't know.
Because that's a whole thing in criminal law.
I don't know. The only thing I've seen on TV being covered is the Rittenhouse trial. I haven't seen any coverage. The other one may not have started yet. They're both going on right now. But the Ahmaud Arbery trial, I don't think is getting the press coverage that the Rittenhouse trial is getting.
Well, I think
that may have to do with whatever the access is, right? They got cameras in the.
That's the whole thing too, which it varies by what the judge gets to decide whether or not you have cameras.
Did you see this Kyle Rittenhouse? Yesterday he testified and he broke down and started crying.
I didn't see the video, but I saw that story.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so ridiculous. And
well, there's a lot of people who
did it help him? Did it hurt him? I think it made him look like.
Well, there's a lot of people who've. I'd say a lot of people. I read some comments where nobody was taking a side on this blog that I read about the trial, but they're basically saying, "Hey, panic attacks are a real thing." And if that's what you saw, because I didn't watch the video, so let me just throw that out there. But if that's what you saw, those are real, and don't criticize this guy.
The panic attack that we saw.
If he broke down on the stand.
Well, yeah, you killed two people and wounded another with no justification, and you're on trial for murder. I think I'd have a panic attack too.
Yeah, but the implication was, hey, that was a show to try to get sympathy from the jury.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
how old is he now? 18?
He's 18 now. So, I mean, it's such a sad story. This white kid crosses state lines, goes to some kind of BLM kind of demonstration area where things are getting out of hand. What a surprise. And he's carrying around an AR-15.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is again, so I know more about this story than the other story, but by no means am I an expert, and I'm not in the courtroom, so I don't know.
Different, but the Kyle Rittenhouse. Why does a white kid cross state lines?
Never mind if he's white or anything. Why do you leave your house?
Okay, go ahead.
Because really, why leave your house He was like a rebel without a cause. That's the truth. So again, I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's a racist. I don't know if he was looking to go kill black people, right? Why do you leave your house and bring an AR-15 and go to where there's unrest? Why do you do that?
Some kind of
only bad shit can happen if you do that.
Right, exactly. And only in some
like
kind
staying
of,
out after midnight.
Some kind of deluded, let me try to leave race out of this. Some kind of deluded person that thought, the best idea he could come up with on that night was to put on his military flak jacket and shit, dress up like a militiaman, get his semi-automatic assault rifle, drive to another state, and insert himself into a fucking riot.
Does he have parents?
I assume he does.
Did he live at home with his parents?
Don't know. Yeah,
and the people that
so. He was probably 16 when this happened.
I think he was 17.
17. Okay,
because this was only about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a stupid story. I mean,
it is. It's exactly what it is. And again, I don't know anything about the guy. I don't know what his motivations were or anything. Why go there? Why did you need to leave your house under any pretense and bring a gun and look for trouble?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think my inclination is to just write him off as a lost, deluded 17-year-old that was overly affected and radicalized in some way by probably a never-ending torrent of misinformation and nonsense that he was getting out of the media, right? And I can say with some authority that what you see on regular, what we would call mainstream and what the right's going to call liberal mainstream media is not anything, whether it's television or news or radio or internet, that's not the stuff you see on the left side of that spectrum is not stuff that makes you do that. That's all coming from the right. That's all nonstop rhetoric about how, BLM, and because the race does enter into this. The fact is he was white and this was a Black Lives Matter situation.
And the victims were all black, right?
No, the victims are white.
Oh, really? The ones that he killed?
The two guys he killed and the one he wounded. He shot 3 different people.
And two died, okay.
2 died, and the other one he lived. And
they're all white?
They're all white guys, right? So
okay.
I'm not saying that the guy went there so look, I think it's complicated, right?
Yeah, very.
I think that this was a white kid. So, I mean, I think race does play into this. This was a white kid that had been probably intaking a lot of right-wing rhetoric, especially shit about Black Lives Matters and Antifa and all this kind of stuff, right? And how blacks in Kenosha were out of control and they were attacking the police and the poor police and blah, blah, blah. Blue Lives Matter. And he suited up to go help the white cops. We're cops.
Where's the chronology in this? Is this after the
George Floyd?
Is it after the trial?
No, I don't know. No, this was a while ago.
God, it's all a blur.
George Floyd was killed. It was all over the place. And then there were demonstrations that happened all through that summer. And many of them, as nighttime came, looting and stuff would happen. Nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter demonstration or anything. Not because of it, not because they were black people, because that's what groups of people do at night. And then cops handle it in a variety of different ways. I'm not criticizing the police one way or the other. I think we saw some good situations where they did the right things the best they could, and others where they inflamed the situation unnecessarily and caused a lot of it to happen. But either way, who there needs a white kid from another state to, a 17-year-old to drive in with his paramilitary horse shit and get involved, right? What causes that? That's right-wing media propaganda. Let's just call it what it is. This euphemism that we've adopted for the bullshit coming from the right is misinformation.
But that's
just the wrong fucking word.
Yeah, but you don't know.
The word is propaganda.
You don't know if that's what was influencing him. Like I read something else about whether or not he had some Call of Duty video game habits. That's why he wanted to be a militia guy. Is that right-wing propaganda? Is it?
Right. I mean, Call of Duty. I played tons of Call of Duty.
Right.
Right.
Those are good games.
Yeah. I'm not,
you're not
I don't
what?
even own a fucking gun.
Right. I do. But I've played Call of Duty, and I don't want to go shoot people.
I do in Call of Duty, but
of course, that's the idea of the game.
Well, I mean, here's my response to that. Do I know if that's what happened? That is what I assume has happened. Maybe we'll find out. I mean, the trial is ongoing, and I don't know. But I mean, just think about it. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have a trial. You just have to look at the situation. White kid, arms up, cross the state lines, goes to a Black Lives Matter demonstration, inserts himself with a loaded rifle. What do you think?
Well, listen. You have to have a trial, of course. Even for a guy who doesn't like structure, you're more structured than me. You have to have the trial because that's what you have to do. But I would assume, given his age, that most of his media exposure would be social media. That's probably a fair statement. I don't know how much. I mean, this is a broad assumption, right? I have no idea. But we assume 17-year-olds are consuming their news and their media through social media sites. I would assume less on Fox News. Maybe he watches Fox News. I have no idea. I don't know the parents' situation.
Maybe he's subscribed to the Oath Keepers.
Maybe.
Who the hell knows? I'm going to guess that it's some combination of right-wing propaganda that twisted this kid's brain. And hey, look, there were millions of other kids that were exposed to the same thing that didn't gear up and head out to Kenosha. So is it the fault of that stuff? It's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're looking for reasons. The question was, why does this happen? Why would this kid do this? Why would this kid insert himself into this? I'm saying, well, the answers are fairly transparent. I mean, fairly easy to figure out. A bunch of right-wing propaganda, Blue Lives Matter, anti-BLM shit got this kid motivated to cross state lines and get involved. That's
so
what
do you
happens.
think
that's radicalization? That's online radicalization. It's how it works. It's the same process that causes some Muslim kid that grows up in Philadelphia to blow up a cop car or something, or get on a flight to Turkey and then head into Syria and become part of ISIS. I mean, it's the same process. This is the thing we're talking about.
How long do you think that process takes?
I don't think it takes that long.
As a 17-year-old.
I think 6 months of concentrated.
Do you think that's it?
Yeah, I don't think it takes that long. I mean, first off, 16, 17, it didn't start probably didn't start when he was 17. So let's figure that sometime between 15 and 17.
This would be a good question for like a clinical psychologist because the truth is,
how long does it take a mush-headed kid?
Yeah, right.
Right, with no clear. And that's another thing about white people that you got to take into consideration. I think many times these radicalized white freedom fighters and all the rest of this horse shit that show up and do things like this, they have no feeling of connection to anything, right? They're jealous. I mean, black people, when BLM is demonstrating all across the country, they're fucking jealous that they don't belong to something, right? They can't. I mean, all the BLM demonstrations that I saw, every single one of them was a huge mix of people, white, black, Asian, Mexican. It wasn't all black. This was an outpouring of disgust over the George Floyd murders that ran across the country, and everybody, the George Floyd murder, yeah, and the murder of George Floyd. I mean, that's what sparked this, and it was all of the mostly young black men, but some women too, that were being and had been in recent years killed by unarmed black people, being killed by police all across the country in such disproportionate numbers to how many times unarmed white kids are killed by police, that people just got out in the street in the midst of a pandemic because they're like, fuck it, we don't even care. This is more important. If I catch COVID, I do.
And the pandemic's not real, but go ahead.
Yeah. So all of that, right? So, I mean, I think that, and whether this kid goes to jail or doesn't go to jail or whatever, I don't really care. But my only hope, and it's not a sure thing because it's Florida, that he has a real trial, and that that the real reasons for this are considered an appropriate punishment is excised on him. So the next one maybe doesn't do it, right?
What's an appropriate punishment?
He should go to jail for the rest of his life.
Is that what's on the table?
I'm sure it is. 2 murders.
But he was 17, though.
Yeah, he's being tried as an adult.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're certain about that?
I'm pretty sure about that. I don't know. I mean, they don't show trials of minors on TV.
Yeah, that's probably a good point.
But at any rate, he murdered 2 people. So, I mean, I don't think he's getting off, but
I don't know. Isn't there? I mean, what's his defense? Is that
self-defense?
Self-defense, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the other case that you mentioned, totally unrelated, but what was the guy's name again?
Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmaud Arbery. To me, there's really no defense in that case, right? Because
for the white vigilante guys that chased him down and killed him,
right? Because there's no question as to whether or not they were being chased or whether or not they were being attacked or fired upon.
They're going to claim self-defense, but the guy was unarmed.
Well, but there's no claim of self-defense because there was no altercation, right?
Well, I'm sure they're making a claim of self-defense, and I don't know the details of how they came to shoot him to death or kill him or club him to death or whatever they did to him. I don't know the details on that, to be honest with you. Because again, I'm a 65-year-old white guy, not a 35. If I was a 35-year-old black guy, I would know every detail of that case, and I'm sure I'd be pissed off about it because that's the kind of thing that terrorizes every black person in this country, right? The thought that, and by all accounts, this guy was a rather athletic young black man, that you're just go for a jog. Everybody jogs. I mean, my fucking neighborhood is full of people running around all the time.
Everybody but you.
Everybody but me.
But I think there's a lot.
But I don't know. You go out, you go for a jog, and you end up dead.
But just to be clear, that case, the shooters were not law enforcement. They were just okay.
No, it was just JWB, right? You know what that is?
Yeah, jogging while black.
Yeah, that's all it was. That's all it was.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. And it's again, I don't know the specifics of the case. I'm not following the trial. But given
the same as so many other
yeah,
ones,
given past
it's another
trials,
it's another lynching
and self-defense claims, there's really nothing you could say there. And even if, let's just say, even if they observed a crime taking place, what did you say it was a robbery, a claim, something in the neighborhood?
There was some burglary or something.
You can't even shoot somebody who breaks into your house. I mean, so
no, and there's something too.
Which is dumb, but. But you can't even do that, let alone shoot somebody in the neighborhood that you didn't see committing a crime.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? You hear about it one way or the other, however you become aware that supposedly there was some burglary or something, and you see a black guy running down the street, you automatically assume that's the guy? I mean, come on. That's on the face of it, it's just stupid.
And the thing, it's just so...
But, that's the crime that... literally thousands, tens of thousands, I'm going to say, of white people have committed and gotten away with in the South for 200 years, 400 years. Right?
Tens of thousands? I don't know.
How many lynchings do you think there were?
I have no idea.
It wasn't 5, I can tell you that. I mean, Billie Holiday didn't write a song called, what was the name of that song? Oh, shit. I shouldn't have brought that up because I don't remember the name of the song.
Well, it's the second time today.
Yeah. But, I mean, listen. That was a lynching. Okay, that's what that was. That's what Ahmaud Arbery's execution was.
Are they going to say, I mean, listen, I like to pretend I'm a lawyer. I don't have legal terms and legal definitions here. Mm-hmm. Are they going to say, or let me ask you this way.
Facto,
are they trying,
facie, okay, he wants some legal.
Are they trying him is it first degree murder? Because isn't that premeditated?
Who's
I guess.
This? Which one?
The Ahmaud case?
It's 2 white guys for murder.
Yeah, what's the charge?
It's first degree
First
murder.
degree.
Yeah.
Which is premeditation. So
when you jump in your car or your truck or whatever the fuck,
I guess that would qualify.
Chase the guy down, bring your guns or clubs or whatever.
Did they go get guns or did they have guns on them?
I'm sure they had them. I don't even know if they shot him.
This is the weird.
They might have jumped on him and beat him to death.
Yeah, I know. And this is the kind of weird thing, right?
Either way, it's all premeditated murder. So.
But this is the interesting thing. It's I'm thinking of placement, right? Like if we talk about road rage, here in California, we've had some road rage conversations. If if you have a gun on you, whether it's in your pocket, in your bag, in your car, and you get into a road rage altercation, maybe you pull over the side of the road and you get into a fist fight, you got a bat, you got a gun. Whatever you have is probably going to be used is where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, he wasn't at that place. He chose to grab his gun, load it, drive wherever he drove, and he placed himself there. Mm-hmm. And in the case of the Ahmaud trial, these guys, from what you're telling me, did they have a gun? Did they go back and get a gun? Why are they placing themselves in the middle of what they perceived was a crime happening? Whether it was or it wasn't, and it sounds like it wasn't, it didn't, or at least Ahmaud wasn't involved, if there actually was a break-in somewhere. Why are they placing themselves in the middle of a situation that they don't need to belong to?
Well, that's a good question. So let me preface it this way. So you've got two white Southern Floridian hicks with guns or weapons of some kind, and they see a young black guy jogging down the street. What do you think the reasons could be? What could they be that they chased him down and murdered him? What could the reason be? Terror, racist, bigoted fucks.
And do you think that they saw their opportunity to kill a black person, that they thought they could get away with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're living in a place where...
Where in Florida was it?
I don't know. Miami? No, I don't know. I don't know. They said it. They say it every time they talk about it.
I'm guessing. Again, I have no idea. It's got to be
some pretty hicked out places in Florida, right? I mean, there's some pretty deep southern. I mean, if you're down in Miami, that's
it wouldn't be Miami. I wouldn't
right,
think.
But up in the Panhandle or something, up close to the rest of the fucking southern dipshit states. But
let's not assume and suggest all white Southerners are. What'd you call them, hicks? Racist hicks.
Racist fucks. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a pretty decent assumption. But go ahead.
I don't know. To me, it's that doesn't sound like a lot of wiggle room for defense in any of these cases. But
and you know what? I didn't need a lot more knowledge about both cases to really get into that. But there have been so many, right? There's so many, and often, especially when they take place in these deep South places, the guys get off or the sentences are not right.
But I think, and there's a lot at play, and I think what makes it magnified, of course, is the racial element and the racial tensions in this country. But I gotta think that there would be some, I don't even want to say confidence, but some level of hope based on the outcome of the George Floyd case, where not only did you have a white guy kill a black guy, but the white guy in that case was a sworn police officer. So that kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, the higher standard, that if justice was served in that case and they were able to convict a white cop, again, I say hope is the best word I can think of. Is there hope that maybe that momentum will continue?
Well, my guess is it's better now than it used to be. There's more chance for justice to be served in cases of especially, unarmed black people being killed by police for whatever variety of nonsense reasons they can come up with. The tired, broken down defenses and the just straight up racism that would have allowed, white assailants of black people to get off, even in the face of overwhelming evidence that has been so prevalent in our history. That's hopefully changing, and things get on the media, right? So, I mean, everybody knows everybody. Not everybody. See, you apparently do not.
What don't I know
about the Ahmaud Arbery thing, because it's so egregious, right?
Well, and this isn't it's just so many of them. I hate to say it.
This isn't a guy
so many
that
of
was
these cases.
This isn't a guy that was at a protest or
right.
giving police a hard time. He didn't just rob a liquor store in downtown New York, and he didn't do any of that kind of
but
shit.
But this is eerily similar.
Jogging,
am I getting this right? It's Trayvon Martin. You know that name?
Trayvon Martin is the kid that was walking through the neighborhood and the loser wannabe cop guy.
Yes, it's eerily similar to that story. What is his name?
well, Trayvon Martin. I can't remember the other guy's name.
I thought you just said it. Zimmerman?
Zimmerman. No,
is that it?
That's it.
So, but it's eerily similar to that, where you have this vigilante wannabe, law enforcement guy, community cop, whatever, who takes it upon himself to, intervene in a circumstance that he thought, only he could solve, and he had to stop this crime. He's like wannabe Superman over there.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
what's
did it have anything to do with his preoccupation with firearms?
Yeah, possibly. But he had, he had a gun on him, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that case was so blatantly mishandled.
Wasn't this the kid he had, like, he claimed he had a gun, but it turned out he had Skittles? Or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Or an iced tea or some bullshit. He had something in his hand. But, you can't use the fact that somebody had some unknown thing in their hand as justification to shoot him to death.
Yeah, especially as you get older, you can hardly see. What the hell is that he's got in his hand?
Wow, it's just one ageist thing after another.
That is the theme, isn't it?
Wow.
You know what's from the policing element? Like, I'm not a big fan of any of this defund the police and
don't even
hang on. You don't even know.
That.
You don't even know where I'm going with this.
All right, go ahead.
I'm not a big fan of that whole conversation. Does there need to be changes in policing? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But here's something I read, that there's a city, maybe it's Portland. Maybe I'm going to get that wrong.
Yeah.
That they are now changing. One of the changes in policing that I did agree with is the police are not allowed to pull people over for traffic violations, whether it's a missing license plate, a broken tail light, maybe even speeding. That was in there. And I saw it because
you're supposed to give them their ticket. You're going
to so here's that
shoot it at them with a cannon.
No, you shoot them in the back when you shoot their rifle.
Bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Boom.
It got on my radar because it became a rallying cry from the right that here we go, more lawless cities are, going to let the citizens run free and break into more buildings, and now they're going to be speeding through neighborhoods and the cops aren't allowed to pull them over. But I actually like the change, because my argument is we need less encounters. The citizens need fewer encounters, physical encounters with law enforcement. Whether or not it's a CHP that pulls you over in the middle of the night on the road to Vegas and he gets run over, plowed down by a drunk driver, you don't want that. And you don't want police officers being overly aggressive to black people or any people and killing innocent people that they have no involvement in any crime whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And one way to do that is to have fewer interactions with people.
I guess this stems from, I'm sure that there are no end of studies that show that it doesn't matter probably where it is, but I'm sure the farther south you go, the more prevalent this is, that when you look at the ethnicity of people in any given geographical area over a specified set of time, that you're always going to see that people of color are being pulled over at a much higher rate than white people. And that results in more tickets, more interaction, more getting drug into the process, more court appearances, more possibilities for police civilian problems. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly right. So let's say you pull somebody over because they have a broken tail light or, whatever. And if the police are targeting those vehicles who are maybe older in a, what's the proper word? Like a socioeconomic, lower, exactly.
Area. Yeah.
That community would normally be made up of, minorities, black people, other minorities. And therefore the crime is already, hey, your tags are expired, your tail light's broken. Oh, and you have marijuana in the car. Okay. Now you're going to jail for life. I mean, that's all. It's one thing leads to another.
I guess when you look at things and you say, well, do we want police to enforce traffic laws?
No.
I mean, is that really?
Yes, that's what we're saying. And the answer is no.
We want?
No, we don't. Let me ask you this. How many years have we had the automobile?
Yeah, 100 years.
100 years. And have we solved the speeding problem yet?
More than 100 years, but go ahead.
We're still issuing speeding tickets. Is speeding still a thing? In 100 years of the automobile, has citing people for speeding,
speeding.
Has it served as the deterrent that they say it's supposed to?
No, but
so what are we doing?
It's a revenue generator.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. And as much as cops tell you, every police department, every state highway patrol, they'll all say, "Oh no, there are no quotas."
There are.
Like that. Yeah, it's a revenue generator.
Of course it is.
So someone is reviewing it and saying, "Hey, you're either up 10% or you're down 15% or whatever on the amount of tickets and revenue that's being generated. So do this, that, or the other to, do it less, do it more, whatever. You're writing too many tickets. This is going to come out and we're going to get in the spotlight, or you're not writing enough. And, we can't keep the fat policeman's slush fund going.
That's exactly what it is. So whether or not we need the money, whatever, we don't need to be pulling people over for that bullshit.
Well, I mean,
and with technology, I mean, that's probably more of a reason why we don't need to do it. There's, the traffic cam has been a thing now for, I don't know, at least 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah, but it's almost gone already.
But
you mean as far as people getting tickets from
running red lights, which are pretty good, right?
They don't. First off, they don't enforce it, and I think it's all been eliminated.
Why?
Because there were too many false positives on that. Too many situations where people were fighting it and winning, and then court cases, and so I think it's all but been eliminated.
Those were probably just good lawyers. I have seen some of those photos, and they're pretty fucking good. Yeah. You're like, that's you.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I can see that. Yeah, that's your polka dot tie. That's your stupid face. Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, I think there's some. I think there were some privacy issues and different things that came to the fore. But we're going to face these issues over and over again, right? The police have something now called license plate identification or something, where they have cameras randomly put around in cities, and they are randomly scanning license plates and keeping records of what license plates are going where and when and things like that. And people are going like, what the fuck? And hey, has it ever, in some far-fetched police investigation on CSI or something, have they ever used that system to do something that caught a child killer or something? I don't know, maybe. But more likely it's being misused, right? And then you find out things like facial recognition, right? So we were on the verge of having widespread use of facial recognition technology supplied by a few different sources being used by police organizations around the country for a variety of reasons, law enforcement, apprehension, whatever. On the verge of that, it came to light that, so how does facial recognition work? It's artificial intelligence, right? How does AI learn? AI learns by feeding AI billions of examples of whatever you're trying to teach it, right? And so it comes out that right on the verge, right? That guess what? If you're white, artificial or facial recognition works pretty good. They can tell if you're if you're male, if you're female. They can identify you, with a pretty high degree of confidence. If you're black, it's like half as accurate.
Are you talking about like the thing that opens your iPhone?
Yes, that is is facial recognition.
My daughter opened my iPhone with her face.
With her face.
That was weird.
It's a flawed technology, right? It doesn't. So what they found that and this was not on purpose. Nobody did this on purpose, but the bias, there's a built-in bias against people of color. The technology simply cannot read the dark faces as well as it can the lighter white faces.
Does it have something to do with lighting?
No, it's that the technology itself just doesn't read the darker face correctly. So here's the problem. You would say, well, that's unfair to white people because we're going to get identified more accurately. Well, that's going to be great because that means that I'm not going to be identified by facial recognition from a camera on some light post in downtown LA and then arrested, right, for rape mistakenly, right? Because,
but even then,
because my face is not going to be misidentified. But in the wrong hands, in the hands of police, and with their track record of how things like this are utilized, right? We're on the verge of having so many people of color identified incorrectly, mistakenly, as people that have committed crimes.
Yeah, that's the right call to not use facial recognition in policing, because there's a lot of faces that look like other faces, white faces, black faces.
That's only here, right? In China, so in China,
everyone has your doppelganger.
Every
right?
face, every face in China is in the database, right? I mean, you can't do anything in China without submitting your face.
How soon before the Chinese are required to have microchips inserted into them?
Through their vaccine? I don't know.
Or how is that a thing? I mean, don't you think their government at some point they got to be going in that direction?
Know, man. I mean, the time you could spend theorizing about what kind of authoritarian nonsense is going to go on in China is limitless, I think, right? And I don't know. I mean, I don't have any good answers for that. Do we go to war with China? I think it's a mistake. And we are so far away now, and so much farther away now after our Trump administration experience of having the moral high ground on anything, anywhere in the world. We flushed all that down the toilet with our putting kids in cages and all the rest of the bullshit that goes on. And so I don't think we have the moral authority to even effectively influence world opinion on what China does about anything. When you hear about the United States condemning China for doing things that seem authoritarian, it rings hollow after our 5-year odyssey with the Trump Meister. Right? Our own president of the United States did everything he could to become an authoritarian strongman ruler.
If you take that statement on its own, maybe, but if we're going to say, I mean, you just said it, if you're going to say that we don't have any moral high ground to stand on if we're going to criticize China, that's got to be older than just Trump. I mean, this country has done some pretty atrocious things in its history.
Here's the thing. I totally get that. And, but what I'm going to say is that the unabashed reach for authoritarian power, topped off with the bullshit at the Capitol on January 6th, and now the cover-up that he's trying to engage in about it, is just here's what it says. You have stripped away in a matter of 5 or 6 years what little veneer of moral high ground the United States had on the world basis. Yeah,
I don't think so.
We've always
take this climate
always
thing.
Supported dictators and things like that. I mean, the Shah of Iran was our guy.
Yeah,
everybody knows that. But at least we maintained at least the appearance of being in the guiding light of democracy. That was not happening during that entire time.
But are you saying it's still gone?
Well, I mean, I don't think that Biden going to the world climate thing and going, "Hey, we're back," changes everything.
No, but I think,
fix everything.
we talked about this too right after the election. I think there was a huge sigh of relief globally.
Absolutely,
So if anything, people were just the rest of the world was just waiting it out until we figured out our shit. And I think you're right. Biden making those claims doesn't do anything, but I think there's at least
it doesn't make it worse.
No, it doesn't make it worse. If anything, it's like, okay, we can at least have conversations again with the Americans, and maybe we'll work something out.
Here's the problem, I think. What Trump could tear down and fuck up in one term, right? Hopefully just one term. Could take generations to
It's not. He didn't permanently change or do anything. And by the way, even these tax cuts that, a big talking point, we've talked a lot on the podcast about it, and leading all the way up to the infrastructure bills and everything else. Let's not forget that, if I'm not mistaken, almost all of it, untouched, expires anyway in like 26 or 27. All of the Trump tax cuts that we've belabored over and talked about, the advantages, the disadvantages.
The corporate tax rate?
All of that stuff is set to change back. So
I don't know about
that. Anyway, the point is nothing is irreparable. Nothing is permanent.
Well, I'm going to go with you on that one. So. And I do want to mention, too, although this will mean nothing to the listeners, but That phone case is awesome. When did you get this glow in the dark red?
It is very glowy, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Oh, it's just the trim. Okay.
Did you think it was actually a light that was glowing?
No, I thought the whole thing was red.
No. I got to keep
candy apple red.
Candy apple red. I got to keep with the theme. We have some red elements here in the studio.
Right.
So.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And besides, you always, come in here fired up. You see red. So I was trying to.
I'm surprised I can see your phone at all. It should be invisible. I don't feel very fired up. I mean, I think this was a great conversation. I'm glad I got in my one thing. I wanted to make sure I got Big Bird in there. So I did promote that. So.
I mean, here's what it shows. There's nothing that is not political or that won't be politicized. There's nothing that, in this case, the Republicans are not going to touch if it gets their name in the news, if it's a reason that they can, cause a fight about something. So it begs the question. I've asked you this before. What do we have in common? What can we do? How do we kind of bring everything together? We've talked about the history of this country and the things that we used to have in common, and what was that, even if a lot of it was a false foundation, but there was some commonality, and now we have nothing in common.
I don't think that. I mean, look, I think s'mores could probably cure everything, right? More time around the campfire.
No doubt about it. What do you think about a national public service program where everybody, not just in the military, but like there are other,
service corps.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I've heard extensive discussion about this, mostly by Pete Buttigieg during his campaign.
Is he in favor of it?
Yeah, he's in favor of it. And he's not the first guy to ever come up with it, right? I am not a fan of the draft. I mean,
Me neither.
There was a time where that was one of the great, that was one of the things that kind of, drew a lot of people into the service for a while. But I'm not a huge fan of the idea of mandatory service, but I think a service corps that, where people that wanted to serve the country but didn't want to join the military to do it could do it. And I think that could be the basis of some strengthening of the ties,
community.
Right?
Yeah, some type of communal.
And provide some commonality, but I mean, you got to be vigilant, right? I mean, how easily could something like that be co-opted by the wrong people, right? So, I'm okay with that. I'm surprised to hear anything along the lines of a service corps coming from the other side of this table.
Yeah, but you know what I'm thinking about, though? I've thought about this for many years, especially as I, now cross the threshold of being middle-aged, but
you got to shave because you're starting to think of yourself as old, and that you're not.
I do have a lot of gray, that's for sure.
Oh my God!
But I don't regret anything I've done in my life. Decisions I've made, good decisions, bad decisions, you name it. Piercings, tattoos, nothing. I don't regret anything I've done, but I regret things I haven't.
Too much information right there.
I regret some things I haven't done, and. One of those things is service in some way. When I was young, like maybe approaching 30, I was really thinking about that. And in this country, the only real option is military service. And I had a friend who was German, and they had a program, Service Corps.
Well, we used to have the Peace Corps, but that was foreign. That was foreign service, right? That was out of the country.
But I think, and as a parent now, I think I would support something like that, because why not? I guess the alternative is look how fucked up things have become, because we have less in common than, maybe we don't.
Well, look, here's a way you could pay for that, right? That would help make sense, right? You could provide, so the only way you get college assistance from the government is to join the military.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a harsh trade-off, I can tell you. So what if you had the service corps, and one of the things you got of that were something akin to the GI benefits that you get for joining the military? That would, so then, because listen, here's the thing. We need to provide more higher education for people in this country. I don't want to forgive anybody's college debts or whatever that they took on freely.
And we need higher education, not liberal education.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. But moving forward, I think, that a program like that could accomplish many things, as well as then providing some assistance, for higher education or job training or whatever, post service corps participation. And, you get that thing where you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're providing service to the country. There's no way for you to provide any service to the country at this point. You're too old. You could.
We're providing a service.
Well, yeah.
Here on this podcast.
Better be it. And the mega money that you're pumping into the economy with all your business interests, and I think that's all going to be. You just have to look at it. I mean, you know what? Being a good citizen, being a participant in the political system, being good to other people, being a productive member of society, that all fulfills that thing. If you have a need to do something, I understand that. I don't have that need, but I understand.
We know you don't.
But I do understand the concept of a service corps, and that's one of the things that you could say, hey, we're just not going to give people money to go to college to the government, but yet the service corps could be providing actual things to people in the country that we would otherwise have to pay for some other way. And so you're going to pay them less than it would cost you to have private sector do it, create all that good.
Yes. And maybe those people will pay it forward when they're done.
Right. And they'll learn things, and then we'll help them go to school or whatever.
And they'll come up with new and creative ways to better our society and lower taxes and all that other good stuff.
It's all good. That's the kind of stuff we need to, at some point I think people get sick of this division. And I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm hoping that just getting sick of this shit is going to move people to be more open to try to figure out how to work together, because the alternatives are catastrophic, right? And I think that, frankly, there's a need. I think there's a will. There's a desire in people to want to find those kind of answers, to have some kind of gelling of the society, right? And I think that one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that Trump and his ilk were successful in bringing, and are continuing to be somewhat successful in keeping this core group of people, is that there's no other productive outlet for these people that feel lost and unlistened to. That could be changed, right? And so I think that there's hope on that. So we need more volunteer for psychedelic treatment. Trust me, this week I've been thinking about microdosing quite a bit.
Let's do it. Let's go find a place. Well, listen, have we had enough fun today, my friend?
Yep, this is good.
It might be too kumbaya today for our listeners. I don't know.
It might be. Well, if it is, we'll hear about it.
All right.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.